Welcome to the ArcFluence podcast, where we talk about how design impacts the way we live, work, and invest. I'm Nick Karakaian, your host, and today with me are my amazing co-hosts, Paul Fatkins and Nino Samardzic.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, how's it going?
Good.
What are we talking about today?
Commercial projects.
Okay.
So if I'm an investor or I work for a business or a small company or a mid-sized company or a large company, and I want to design and build a new building for my business, or I want to renovate an existing structure that we already have, we're going to talk about the conversations, the preliminary design process, who are the players involved, and what we should expect.
Sure.
Okay, great.
Good.
Where do you think? So is it more about like where do you start? Like,
Yeah, so if we're thinking about if we have a storefront, like we can start with any type of let's say retail, commercial retail, and we either want to open a new location, or we want to renovate our existing location. What are the steps we need to take and do? What should we be prepared for?
I think there's different levels of complexity.
Yes.
And let's say retail space, and you have a store that's selling things, so mercantile use. And you're going to do another store selling whatever different things from before. Maybe it was whatever. They were selling some merchandise for vacuum cleaners, and now they're going to sell groceries, right? It's still mercantile use. So if it's not a change in use, honestly, and you're not really doing major renovations, it might be something as simple as like an occupancy plan.
Yeah.
And that's all you need to document and submit.
Yes.
No new equipment, no changes in your plumbing, electrical,
Which
mechanical.
is very going to be rare.
Yeah. It's like this most simple case.
Yes.
So what if I don't know a change in use? Do I call an architect and have a consultation?
I will say the first step, call the architect and do the consultation, explain architect what you're planning to do. Let's go invite architect to see the space if you're converting, and he's going to tell you to what level of the development of your plan you need to go, and also depending on the jurisdiction where that facility is located.
Yep.
Yeah, personally, I'm going to ask, what was here before, right?
Yeah.
Because I want to know what's going there, what's going in there now, and what was there before.
Exactly.
Because a lot of times, like Nino said, it's not typical that whatever was there before, it's almost a similar thing going in there now.
Or is going to match it.
It's usually going to be a change of use, which then complicates what you have to document.
I mean, you remember when it was like one of these fast food restaurants we had transformed into the liquor store.
Yeah.
So it still was a change of the use, or like a cooling loads is going to be the same, like heating loads is going to be the same. Even locations of outlets is going to be the same.
Well, we do have new equipment going in, like the beer cave or stuff like that.
So I will say call the architect. That's the first step one, and he's going to determine very easily if you're going to need a permit for your project. So that all going to depend on the level of the adjustments you're going to actually create in that space.
Yeah, I think 99% of the time you'll probably need some type of permit
you'll
application.
probably need some type of the permit. It can be easy on architecture, can be just like some mechanical or electrical adjustments that you need to do. It all depends, but it can be everything.
Even if it's just occupancy, though, I think you need a permit application.
Just the application for a change of occupancy, if you're changing occupancy. But if you don't and you have to just adjust couple outlets, you're probably still gonna need some kind of permit.
Yeah.
But involvement of architecture is gonna be smaller.
You probably wouldn't need architectural drawings for a couple of outlets.
No.
But if you're adding some type of equipment, the city's gonna want to see load calculations.
Yes.
Now you need a permit.
Exactly.
Now you need drawings.
Exactly.
So since we see a change in use probably more often than not, let's talk about if I buy I lease a space in a beautiful modern strip mall, and I want to put my business in this space. And let's say we do a lot of, we shout out to Liberty Wines, and we do some restaurants, some retail spaces, things of that nature. So if it's going to be in that realm, what's kind of my steps now? I meet with the architect. He's saying you're going to need drawings. What should I expect as the business owner?
Well, I still think the number one step is reaching out to consult with the design professional.
Yep.
So he mentioned that.
So I've done that.
As soon as you've done that.
Now walk me through that process, Paul. What should I expect? What does that experience look like to me as the business owner?
Well, any change of use, you're going to trigger requirements to be met on all fronts. So, it's not just as simple as this occupancy application. You're now going to have to comply with all ADA stuff. You're going to have to comply with ventilation, heating, cooling, like everything is on the table.
So
everything.
If the building was built in the 1990s,
doesn't matter. Everything's on the table.
Exactly. So
it doesn't matter if it's a brand new building. You still have to make sure you're complying with everything if it's a change of use.
Exactly. So, and that includes the water line that's coming into the property. Yep. It might be undersized. So if you're going to have multiple sinks in back of house for the kitchen, like we might have to enlarge that water line.
Yeah, I will say the first thing, like you already have architect is gonna tell you like, hey, Mr. Owner or Mrs. Owner, we're gonna need to expand this team. We're probably gonna need to involve the engineers. So what engineers depend on what type of project is, but most likely it's gonna be mechanical, electrical, and
let's say this is a smaller space. We're not gonna be touching the exterior, and this is just gonna be an interior. Fit out where we're going to be gutting the space and making it work for my company.
And change of use for that scenario, would be MEPs. Is your basic.
You're going to have MEPs.
Don't need structure. You don't need civil. You don't need a geotech. You just MEPs.
Maybe you need to add another toilet depending on a type of the use you're going to use. It automatically is going to trigger your plumbing.
Janitor's closet,
exactly.
ADA, the new ADA standard in Ohio.
And all the plumbing is based on your square footage and based on your occupants.
Exactly.
So if it's a smaller space, you might actually be under a certain number, especially if it's a retail space. There's certain exceptions you can get away with. For example, you might have like a one unisex restroom and that's it, with no drinking fountain and no service sink.
Yep.
It all depends on your square footage, number of occupants, and then there's certain exceptions you can get around. Otherwise, if you're over a certain amount and you're a certain type of use, you're going to need a drinking fountain. It's going to need to be ADA compliant with a high-low. You're going to have your service sink somewhere.
So, Paul and Nino, are you going to be first of all, are you charging me for this initial consultation to see you, for you to come to my business?
Well, typically, I think we do. It depends. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Like if we have to drive to Cincinnati, right, to have this on-site consultation, then there might be some to cover some time there, to drive down and back and have that meeting.
But then at this meeting, you're not necessarily telling me all the things that you're talking about. We can have a preliminary conversation about it, that it's probably required, but we would still need time to dig into this.
Yes.
So,
I will probably go on a site, see the building, and then I will okay, now give me a little bit time to, let me just go through a little bit through the code, a little bit through your scope. Let me better understand not only your little space, but entire building that you're leasing, see how systems are all interconnected, what feeds what.
Yeah.
And then I will tell you based on a project 9 of 10, you're going to need an architect, you're going to need the MEP engineers.
Yeah. We usually do that for free. We'll have an initial idea that is given to us and hey, here's the address, here's what I want to do. Even if it's a piece of dirt, there's nothing there. Again, we can look at the zoning. We can briefly look at some of this stuff.
I would say
to have an idea, you're going to need A, B, C, D, E, F,
if
G.
you're going to need a variance or not. But if we're not going to calculate you're going to need this much occupancy or this much parking.
Yeah,
or this
it's not a full analysis.
Yeah, so we'll have a preliminary design package that we would have a dollar amount for.
Yeah, it's enough to get a sense of what's needed, and that's kind of initially provided.
That's actually that's what we call just defining the scope.
Yep.
So you as an architect, you will say okay, I'm just gonna tell you how much is gonna evolve from the 1,000 yards away, and then we're going to talk about the scope of the project if scope is not defined. After the scope of the project is determined, then we're going to talk, next thing is going to be the design schedule.
Yep.
And then we're going to tell we're going to explain the client how long is going to take the process to go from the field verification through the design improvement to design the documentations, and then we're going to explain also how long is going to be the process of the permitting.
There you go.
I think a lot of people forget or are not aware of that aspect of it. So they might engage an architect, they might have all these conversations, might get everybody on board, and then they get to the permitting part and it's well, you just submit and we're approved. That's it. It's
No.
like super quick. A week from now, I'll have my permit.
No.
You know,
No, that it will vary depending on the scope of the project. So I'm gonna just take it back for a little bit. And Nino, I don't think we've told you, but ArcFluence is going to be working on a really exciting development project in the UA Grandview area, and we are now moving forward with the preliminary design package. But I kind of like, once we do that, the free consultation and kind of give an idea of where we're going to land, then we engage the contract or the client with a contract,
Yes.
and with a deposit for preliminary design work. And essentially, we're doing a lot of things for the preliminary design work, depending on the scope of the project. If it's new development, we want to have a meeting with the city, a preliminary design meeting with the city. We want to develop some elevations. Paul, do you want to talk about that package a little bit?
I mean, essentially, it's kind of what we talked about on previous podcasts, but you're kind of getting into preliminary schematic stuff, the early on stuff, so that you actually have a sense of exactly what the square footage is, what the programming is. All of that stuff is figured out.
What we're using this for?
It's actually drawn up in plan, drawn up in 3D, drawn up in elevation, drawn up. All your site information is drawn up. So if it's a piece of dirt, you need to draw all of that stuff to even be able to have a conversation with the city or anyone else.
Is that the planning commission that you guys going?
Yep. So you have to do the full site compliance plan.
Yes.
And you'll engage with the engineering department down at the city, and you'll have conversations with them. You also have conversations with zonings. With the zoning
Are you going to
department.
have a public hearing for that?
If you have to do a variance, it's a public hearing. If there's no variances that are needing, say you can meet your parking requirements, you can meet all the requirements,
And
then
they're saying,
you're good.
because that's good to mention, depending of jurisdictions, some jurisdictions actually require the public hearing.
Yeah. If in Columbus, no, there's no public hearing that's required. But if you're going through planning and zoning, usually there is some type of public hearing.
And there's requirements for that. We have to place signage. We have to engage neighbors. Go through the whole process for that.
Yeah. But in Columbus, if you can meet all of your requirements, you should be good.
Met by code. Yep.
Yeah.
So I guess it's important also to say is if we're engaging in the preliminary design package for an X dollar amount, we're also defining now what the scope is truly going to be, talking to our civil engineers, our structural engineer, the entire team that's going to be involved in getting hard numbers on what that the overall cost of the project's going to be.
I think that's more towards the end of the So once you have a clearer picture, right, where you have the square footage locked in, you have your floor plan locked in, pretty much what's going there, versus maybe the initial conversation where it's well, I want to develop something that's 20,000 square foot building, right? Yep. So, okay, is it 20? Is it 15?
Yeah.
Maybe it's only 10 that you can get out of the site.
Right.
Maybe you have to shrink it.
Is the site in a flood zone?
Right. So it's all of that stuff needs to be clearly defined. And then I think at that point you reach out and engage with your engineering partners to get them locked in on things. And then you formally sign contracts with them to get them doing their design work.
Right.
You can actually, and this is important to mention, depending on the size and scope of the project, there is a different types of the procurement that you guys can do it, and also different type how you actually hiring other consultants or other engineers. Usually what you see in commercial world that you hiring the architect, and then architect as a part of his team is going to bring the MEP, structural, whoever.
Yep.
However, client also have the options to actually hire each individual prime for his project. That is really rare. That is on very complex projects, on state projects. Usually, I will say 9 out of 10, you hire the architect. Architect is going to assemble the team. He's going to control his team. Probably your responsibility that architect will not like to touch will be are you going to probably hire the surveyor and geothermal, but everything else should be under architect's umbrella.
Geotech. Yeah. Also, we have had projects where the client has had a kitchen consultant.
Yeah.
So if we're doing a restaurant and it's a specialty with specialty equipment,
there might be certain vendors that you're forced to engage with. When I was working on a lot of the retail stores at my previous employer, again, there were certain vendors we always went to KPS for the walk-in coolers.
Yeah.
So there's certain people that we would engage with always.
And then sometimes we see IT people. That would be IT consultants.
And based on based on the complexity of your project, more complex project, bigger team is usually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or there's more vendors that you have to engage with and rely upon for information.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Let's now switch gears. What if we're working with mom and pop pizza stores or these smaller retail spaces that are actually becoming very common? We're getting a lot of these projects here in Columbus. What if we're just a small business owner? And it could be a
chain.
A chain.
Yeah.
But let's just say this is a one-off situation. It's a small business. We're not necessarily involving all these consultants and engineers. And I want to talk about the timeline and kind of those expectations. So we wouldn't necessarily have a preliminary design package. If this is going to be like a 1,500 square foot, retail space, we're basically going to be able to say, hey, look, you are going to need MEPs. This is going to be the price for this package for construction documents. Can you speak to that process a little bit more and what that timeline looks like?
Well, I think you still have to have some idea of what is going into the space. So if we are not providing some kind of schematic preliminary design of what's going on in the space, you can't just go in blind and start doing stuff. So they would have, like the owner, if it's a small mom and pop shop, they're on the hook to provide that information to you. Because if you have no idea what's going on and what they want, if their vision in their store or whatever it is, the pizza shop that they're opening, there's no way that you can tell what to do without that initial inspiration from them. So they need to provide that guidance if that's the case.
Exactly. And your guidance as an architect usually is going to involve that secret trio of the scope, budget, and the schedule. So based on these three, and these things can vary because sometimes client can think like, I know everything what I need, and I just need something to put on the drawings and we'll be fine. And then when he sees the architect and says, the architect told me like by code, you need to have at least like an additional restroom, or you need this, but wasn't that before?
Yeah. You need another 36-inch door exit,
and you have to tell him like, things changing.
Even the ADA clearances are now what, 5'7"?
Yeah, 6. It's 5'7" turning radius. Yes,
instead of 5 foot 60 inches.
So you have to just inform the client like okay, I understand where you're standing, but based on what I'm seeing, this is why I'm being hired by you, is you're probably going to need X, Y, and Z on top of whatever you already define. But once again, schedule, budget, scope. It's usually the architect's role to help the client balance these three most important items depending of the size, the scope of the project. Can be very small project, but he wants to add something additional. He wants to sell the pizza, and now he wants to sell the ice cream too, and this ice cream machine will require separate things and clearances, and God knows it can be very simple things for him. It can be requiring more components to it, and then he says like you know what, I'm not going to sell ice cream here.
Yeah, or this equipment is now going to require an upgrade in our service.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was like that's what you have. Or I'm going to just have like a very simple ice cream making machine instead of this like whatever gelato kind of monstrous item. Yeah.
I think if you have a smaller mom and pop shop, somebody trying to take on some of these things themselves to cut down on costs, we're almost at that point acting, again, like Nino said, we're not necessarily like under the control of those items, but we're trying to give advice and guidance and, we need this from you, we need that from you.
Exactly.
Right, so that we can provide you whatever we need to provide you to get your approvals and your permits in hand. And it's like, again, it's more at that point, a little bit more of a collaboration and a dialogue with the owner, the client, or whoever's trying to do it.
And we are not going to be in a role like just like whatever client has an idea, and we're going to be like a like a guy who's going to just crush his dreams. We're also looking for the shorter distance to help the client to get from the point A and B and open this.
Obviously, the client would probably have a vision already in mind.
Exactly.
And our job is to help bring that to life and offer suggestions that's going to cut costs.
Yes.
And potentially increase the functionality of the space.
And let them open this store sooner than later. Yeah. Because time is money. So he would like to start running with the business sooner than later.
So that's a good segue.
Timelines.
So what should I expect on these smaller projects?
You always should expect more than whatever is in your head.
I can't do this in 2 weeks, Paul?
No. I guarantee you
Just approval is going to take 30 days.
Yeah, I guarantee you from whatever is in your head, like 99% of the time, it's longer than you think.
So I think right now for a lot of these smaller commercial projects, we're probably getting from initial phone call to permanent hand in
6 months.
I mean,
yes, it can be 6 months.
Oh, it certainly can be.
It can be shorter.
We've seen 4 months. We've seen 4 months.
I mean, we've seen like 2 or 3, but I mean, like that's like if everything is perfectly aligned, the stars are aligned, and everything goes smoothly.
Yes.
The city doesn't have any weird holiday. Or the one time the city had a cyber attack and shut everything down for like a
6
couple
weeks.
Yeah.
Well, everything got delayed, so so they did nothing for 3 weeks, and then everything got pushed back.
If you're in Columbus, in any jurisdiction, expect minimum 30 days.
Yeah.
Of the review time.
You should just realistically always expect a longer timeline.
And a lot of times when you're calling an architect, it's going to take a week or 2 or 3 for them. First of all, they might have a lead time. They might
not even reply to you.
They might not, and they're certainly not going to be able to start right away.
No.
So
especially if it's a mom and pop smaller store, one-off situation. A lot of architecture firms are not going to take that on.
No, because architects chasing something that's going to bring them the profit, like every other organization.
My previous firm, like we had clients where it was like you had to meet a certain quota. And if you weren't over $1 million of revenue coming through the door, then they weren't even interested in having a conversation with you.
Yeah.
So you needed to do multiple projects with them, again, like in the retail space. You had to do multiple projects with them, and then they entertained having you on as a client. And some clients we cut. Because they didn't, all of a sudden, the year before they met the quota, but this year they didn't. So guess what? We don't want you as a client anymore.
Right? Yeah. And also in this experience, architect and client experience. So some clients are well known that some architects trying to avoid them because of just not like respecting the deal or letter of the contract. Exactly. And then, I mean, that's a good signal to client to start understand that on the end, it's a mutual agreement, and it's actually need to benefit both parties. Yeah.
I think that's where we're a little bit different than some other architecture firms. Like we definitely want to help the process more, help the client more. We want to see these projects built and come to life.
Exactly.
Yeah. We also don't include CA work, construction administration, in our initial quotes. It's simply an add-on if it's needed, and on a lot of these smaller projects, it's typically not. I mean, I would recommend we if there's a lumber package that we help review that with our engineering team. Maybe there's some on-site inspections as progress checks, things of that nature, and of course we can certainly help with interior design with that package and landscape architecture. But I mean, on these smaller projects, it's not a requirement. So if you're a business owner that's savvy and is willing to do some collaborative work, be hands-on, like you can do some of these things on your own.
But you always can, like I think you guys also have an options like a limited CA if like an unforeseen condition is being like spotted during the construction, you definitely can swing by and assist and help. With your professional knowledge.
Yeah, and depending on what it is, if there's some request that comes in from the contractor, so you get some RFI or something you need to reply to. Okay, if it's something that needs some clarification, we provide that information. Exactly. But if it's something that's major, because all of a sudden we discover something.
Yeah, we remember some projects when consultants will just like don't inform the architect, start doing on his own, inspector will show up, and the things will go south, and then our simple consultation turn out it almost like a real developed CA just to let contractor know that has to torn down something that is not built according to the documents.
Well, it turns into an entire process.
Exactly.
Multiple inspections, a visit to the city.
So that's like architects should tell the client, like a document that is being approved from the city needs to be executed the way it is approved. There is no, if you want to change something, we have to create a change order, send that to the city again for approval if it affects in any sense life safety, and then we can execute that change. It's possible, it's doable, but it's going to take a little bit more time to do this.
And I think that's the other thing. Like if there is some design change or revision, the city should be on board and approving it before it's executed.
Yeah, exactly. Because what inspector is going to do, he's going to see the compliance of the executed work with approved documents.
Yeah. It's almost like if you go and do whatever after you have approved documents, you're throwing those approved documents out the window because you're not matching what was approved and reviewed.
Because
it's like that review didn't matter, if you're doing whatever after
and
the
that's
fact.
Another key element is which you can actually talk to your architect when we engaged the architect. It was like, okay, maybe you already have a contractor, maybe you don't have a contractor, maybe trying to do some things on your own if you have a license to be doing all this work. But I will say, as soon as you shop for an architect and make the contact with the architect, I will think the next step will be to shop for a contractor who's going to execute that work. Architect can help you because they have really good relationships with the multiple contractor, as ArcFluence has. They can even recommend the contractors with a good record, and then we can actually almost now we have a control, not only design but also execution of the project.
If you have your own contractor, that's fine too, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be someone that we recommend.
Yeah.
But what I would say is, you need to make it crystal clear to the contractor that if something comes up, he needs to engage the architect immediately. We have notes in our drawings that say you reach out immediately.
Any unforeseen condition. We don't have X-ray visions. We cannot see through the walls.
Well, and so I'm just thinking back to another situation where we got a phone call and it's like, well, this closet doesn't work, the stairs don't work, this balcony area, it was 4 different things that didn't work. And I show up on,
how is this possible?
Yeah. It's like your plans are not buildable the way you have them drawn. And I show up, and it all stemmed from the fact that they changed the truss system. And with the change in the truss system, it blocked the closet.
Compromise everything.
Yeah, and the stair issue. Yeah, the stair issue was they didn't have the rise and the run.
They don't have a clearances. Correct.
And so the stair was 2 feet longer.
Well, I also think they changed the width of the stairs.
Oh my God!
We had nice wide 4-foot stairs. I think they narrowed them to 3 foot.
Oh geez.
Oh, it was a disaster.
Yeah. So all of these problems that were caused from the plans not being drawn right were because they made changes on site.
Because make sure that contractor don't look at this
and they only
plans as I'm looking at when I buy IKEA, so I get that guide and I just list it and I say, oh, I know how to assemble this. I don't need the guidelines. and then I put it incorrectly. So
6 hours later.
Exactly. I have contractors who actually, and an experienced contractor on very complicated project, who look at the plans almost like guidelines.
Yeah.
It was like this is the official construction document.
It's verbatim. You do it exactly as it's shown.
Exactly how it is, because inspector is going to come on a site and see something that doesn't match the plan, and he's going to note you for that.
And I will say this. I'm talking on the residential side. I flipped a lot of houses, and I might be inspired in the field. You know what? It looks good on paper, but
maybe look better if you do this way.
Now that I'm in the space, and I'm like, you know what? I'd like to shift this wall over a little bit, or give a little bit more room for
call architect.
Yeah,
exactly. And I was like, there's nothing wrong with making changes.
No,
but let's have a conversation about it.
Exactly.
All the issues were because they did the changes without any consultation.
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden they had 4 or 5 different issues.
I know. Yeah. Because they're looking at same as I'm looking at Kia's guides.
And because a phone call wasn't made, now that you have a potential reputation being tarnished because we're not talking about throughout the process.
So if you want to use your own contractor, by all means, but like I said, they need to be a part of the team, right? They can't be a maverick doing their own thing.
Yes, and it'll be good that contractor is the experienced, a licensed contractor, not the one who become the contractor by looking at the YouTube videos overnight. So
I can put myself in the shoes of the client and say, I want high quality, I want a low price, and I want it done right away.
Yes.
And
that combination of that trio.
Yes.
Yeah, that's that trio: budget, scope, and schedule.
And I want to be Superman, have a spaceship, and travel to other universes.
Exactly. But
so I think the most important thing is quality for me. The goal of and unless it's not, and I don't see that too often. I think more times than not, I would say almost all the time, we want a good product in the end.
Quality. I'm 100% with you.
If it takes a little bit longer, all right, we're going to figure it out. If the price goes up a little bit, we're going to figure it out. But the most important thing for me is this design works, it's beautiful, and it functions.
Exactly. It's a quality product, and that's and you're agreed on it. And if once again down the road, Like you have your mother-in-law comes in and it's like maybe should this orientate this way, not this way. Oh, that's a good idea. And then just let the architect know, because that all needs to be documented, because architect understand that one change can lead to another, to that chain effect. And he can actually, he has a control, he understands all consequences of the certain change, and he can warn you or just tell you, you know what, it's going to be easy change. We can do that without affecting mechanical, electrical, or structural components of it.
Literally one thing could impact 10.
Exactly. It may actually be, you move something and you don't have enough clearance, it doesn't meet the code anymore. You're in trouble.
And here's the thing, you might change something and it affects 10 things, and it just makes it a less desirable design. But what if it affects the exterior, the envelope, or the curb appeal? And now there's all these city implications and zoning implications. They might, you're going to have to change it. You're going to have to fix it.
Or it can be something very simple, but you have to talk to an architect, to design professionalist, because he has a knowledge of the consequence of any change, or should have,
or will consult with the engineering partners involved to get you the answer.
Exactly, that's all team working on it.
I will say another piece of advice for like the mom and pop small retail people, that we're talking about here: contingencies.
Yes.
I don't think anybody plans for budget contingencies. Like obviously when you're talking about like a multi-million-dollar project or some corporation that's doing 20 different stores a year.
They have contingencies too.
Well, they do, but we have a template to go off of.
Yes.
So
it's a standard.
Easy.
They have it built in. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So if you're a mom and pop, startup, this is like a one-time deal that you're doing here in Columbus, local, just small retail space. You have to also plan for some contingency.
Yes.
Because if you do something slightly different, it might raise the cost a little bit. Because you're going to have to pay for that.
What does that look like, and what does that like? Do you have examples?
Again, like what you were mentioning, right? To get something done right, maybe there's some unforeseen circumstance that comes up.
So if you have a hard deadline or life itself ends, you're gambling.
Yes.
Yeah. So like if the deadline gets extended, right, and you need to pay for another month of your lease before you actually open up,
and you're not operational,
you need to be able to cover that cost.
Exactly.
Right? Or again, maybe there's some column in the wall that you didn't plan on being there, and now you have to route your plumbing a different way, and the contractor is going to charge you more money to do that. Again, you need to have that budget
like a
set aside.
certain percentage of the construction cost to be dedicated to the contingencies.
Yeah.
If your equipment packages that you have, it now requires an upgrade in your service or water line or these sort of things. And some of these are not big ticket items, but they still they might just be like, to increase your water line from 3/4 to inch and a half or whatever might only cost like $3,000 or $4,000. But it might take a month to schedule or 2 months to do.
Or guess what? Like all construction go perfect, everything is ready to open, but that gelato machine is still somewhere like on a dock. In Italy, exactly. So it was like, that's going to delay you, and that's going to be the cause of the. But Paul is right. Usually like, especially for construction is not exact science. Things that can go wrong usually go wrong. It's because of unforeseen conditions. We try to minimize it as much as we can, but there's multidisciplinary things. Some things can go out of the order.
Even if you have a laser scan, super high precision, of the space.
Which
we do. But again, like Nino said, we try to mitigate it. Even if you have that, there still could be things that come up.
Can be some old water line that is just like is connected to nothing, and the previous space was operational but not operational by the code.
Or there could be a break in your sanitation.
Exactly.
And the break is in the alleyway in back of the property, and we have to get a permit to shut down the alleyway to do the work.
Exactly. And you not see like
or you call some buddies up.
Do it on Sunday.
and then you come back, it was like but this space was working before. Like it was working before. It was approved. It just inspector didn't cut it.
Yeah,
he didn't cut it on time. He's gonna cut it now. So it's like so just make sure that you have certain percentage of the project cost. Dedicated to the contingencies. Is it 5%? Is it 10%? It's.
I think it could even be up to like 15. Depending on what the overall budget is. If it's a smaller retail space, you might only be like maybe $100,000, right?
Yeah.
So 10% might not be enough. You might need 15% contingency.
Exactly.
And when we're talking about numbers like that on these smaller spaces, if it's key to the function of your business, like it's important, right?
Yeah,
so
it
like,
is important.
So I don't want to make any sacrifices. Like even on the residential side, when we're flipping a house, I don't want to like not do an island or where we're creating these moments for this experience or for whatever.
And
for
it's
your
going to
client.
bring more value to that
A lot.
project. Exactly.
Exactly. So we need to know where that value is at.
Exactly.
And not cut
Yeah,
corners from
exactly.
there.
That's why I also have design professionalists. Yeah.
Yeah, if you have something unique, I mean, people are going to flock to your space.
Oh, yeah.
You know, if people are going to talk about it. Look at the place we went to last night, right? We went out for a drink, and it was like a little speakeasy.
Oh, that was so much fun.
Yeah, so cool. Well-designed space, well thought out, like even the whole experience.
Nino, we took our engineer out for a drink.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
But I mean, like, again, like that sort of thing is so unique, right? Where else can you do that in this area?
Yeah.
Nowhere. So like people go there and it's usually very busy.
Yeah, I would say like a slightly higher bird's view level of this would be we're seeing this type of transitional design if we're going on the experience side of things in commercial and residential, where we're seeing some older elements mixed in with these new modern elements.
Oh yeah,
it's a mixture of these things now.
You know what? This new generation, they don't just like being attracted by the good service, good food, but also now they're more and more demand for a good looking space.
And you know, I saw this in New York when I lived and worked there. People would pay big dollars for that interior design and all that experience.
I mean, look what you guys did to this chiropractor.
Be aligned.
Yeah, they have good services, but now they get moved into the new really nice space.
Yeah. What did Scott say? Their businesses increased.
It was like 4 times or something.
Yeah.
Exactly. Jeez, 4 times.
I think
I thought it was a 50%, so 4 times.
40% or something like that.
Yeah, my goodness.
And we're seeing that theme now everywhere. So Columbus, people are now paying for those services. They want that end result. Yeah.
Because, I mean, honestly, if I'm a client and I'm going to chiropractor, really I would like to go to that space because I feel like these guys know what they're doing, because that space reflects that.
Yeah.
Instead of going to some kind of...
It's a professional, not like back where you have like mold, leaky...
little sign saying I'm the best chiropractor in the world. Good luck. I'm not quite sure I'm going to trust you.
Yeah. So one of our clients, Liberty Premium Wines, the landlord required a photorealistic rendering of the space before they would approve the overall design. They want to make sure that experience is going to be an elevated experience and not just...
That fits with the whole character of the whole development.
Exactly. He doesn't want to hurt himself.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. He doesn't want to lose the other like a client.
Some convenience store that looks like, somebody just threw some shelving in.
So that's a
space.
contingency. That's an add-on service. That was in addition to the construction documents that we had to add on and take care of.
Yeah. I remember, I'm gonna tell you this story. It was like a store. It was like selling like a European food, and it was like all this food that me and my wife costumed for growing up in Europe, and just would like to remind ourselves and have the same food. But the space was really not even up to the hygiene standard. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, as soon as another store opened up, we flogged that space because come on, guys. Yeah. The 21st century, please.
I think we're transitioning, the idea of listen, Danny, there's what's that sushi place that is in a strip mall here in Columbus that the sushi's incredible, but it's just not a really
inviting space.
Actually, let's not say what it is, but that's what you make me think of.
Exactly.
And now I'm like, no, let's go to High Street in the Short North and go to this experiential place with chandeliers and this mood.
It's like as an architect facing everyday's the challenges and competition, the same things with you guys, owners.
You can't buy stuff off of Amazon, or I go to IKEA and buy some shelving, throw it in there, put product on it, and be like, okay, store's open, come in.
Because I trust the product that you're creating, selling the food or whatever, services, But you take the opportunity, getting into the new space, leasing the new space to bring even more clients.
Or like, you're opening a bakery or something.
Exactly.
You're not going to go buy like a bread machine from,
No.
freaking Target or something. And then, I'm opening a bakery and I'm going to bake you fresh bread.
Because first impression is long-lasting
Yeah.
impression.
Absolutely. And you're creating that experience is your brand.
It's so hard, like when you make the misstep and then try to convince the entire world that was just one bad day.
Yeah.
It is so hard, especially in this day and age of the information spreading so quickly.
I would also say, as a business owner, if one thing goes wrong and then something else goes wrong, or so I'm talking about short-term rentals and our guests that stay with us. If one thing goes wrong that's like a pain point for them, then they're going to nitpick
every single
else.
thing. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But if that one thing didn't happen, then it's a 5-star amazing experience, the best place they've ever stayed.
Even though there is little bit things that he doesn't care about.
Yeah, they can get over little things.
Exactly.
But those little things, they'll definitely pile on if that one thing isn't met. So we want to make sure we're putting our best foot forward and checking all those boxes. And design and that experience is key these days.
Yeah. Key.
And I think you're right, though, with the information sharing as well. I'm thinking of like the horror story cases where they had like over in Europe somewhere, they had like a Willy Wonka experience. Do you guys remember that story that came out?
Yeah.
And it was like cartoonish. They like printed out stuff on like cardboard, and like posted it on the wall. And it's just like, again, like the experience that you got when you went there, it was just like childish. Like they didn't know what they were doing. They didn't know how to provide anything properly.
They didn't hire professionals.
Yeah.
No, exactly. That's why you have all these professionals. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's a good spot to end.
It is a good spot to end.
Hire professionals.
Hire professionals.
With a good portfolio that is actually proven in a real world.
Yeah.
Designers and contractors.
I love it. Well, with that, we'll stop there, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Take care.
This has been the ArcFluence podcast. As always, you can get more information and additional content on arcfluence.com. Please subscribe on the platform of your choice and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you.